professionals. Start your day the right way on 99.3 Nigeria Info. Nigeria Info.
It's 99.3 Nigeria Info. Fantastic morning to you. If you're just tuning into the morning Crossfire, it's time to look at the stories making it to the front pages this morning. I'm Wemimo Adewini.
And I am Sheriff Quadri. The Nation is right here with us on the table. We also have here This Day newspaper, as well as Vanguard newspaper, Daily Sun, and Blueprint newspaper.
I have here The Guardian, The Punch newspaper, Daily Independent, as well as the Daily Trust. We're live on Facebook and also on YouTube. You can watch us and leave us your comments also on Twitter at Nigeria Info FM. This morning, Rotimi Sankore is here. Rotimi, good morning.
Morning.
Let's start, people, with The Guardian. The Guardian is our media partner on 99.3 Nigeria Info. And we have our first story making it to the banner here. Why we dumped Peace Summit by Southern Middle Belt leaders. Three riders here, Afenifere, Ohaneze, Pandef, others film at inclusion of Miyetti Allah. Say Headers Group is only a trade group, not a regional organization. Want Abdusalami Abubakar to exclude cattle breeders before involvement. The story also makes it to the front page of the Punch newspaper. Southern leaders shun Abdusalami's summit over Miyetti Allah's invitation. On the front page of the Daily Independent, we also have this one. Southern Middle Belt leaders pull out of security talks. Discussing herdsmen menace with Buhari is waste of time, says Afenifere on the Daily Independent. And this story is also on other papers.
From This Day newspaper, Middle Belt Southern leaders opt out of peace talks. Front page, This Day newspaper. Rotimi.
Well, this is not even the really big story, honestly. The big story is the declaration of the IMN as a terrorist.
Is there?
Yeah. So
organization.
proscribed. In fact, I felt that was going to be the banner. everywhere this morning.
Well, it is on many papers, but just to talk briefly to this peace summit process. See, every government is defined by the legacy that it leaves. The Buhari-led government campaigned and came into office on four pillars. Security was one, corruption the other. Those were the two main ones out of the four. As for fighting corruption, a lot of people have commented on that, including some people nominated to be ministers who parked that in one corner. As for security, I fear that the legacy the Buhari government may leave behind may not be one that it intended to. Because at the time they came to office, Boko Haram was the main security threat in the country. In the last 4 years, the headers have become a threat of sorts. Not all headers for sure, but enough headers have committed enough acts of violence, and the government does not seem to have a hand on it. Bandits have become big. The government seems to be using the powers it has not very judiciously. All these operations, snake this, snake that, Python, all over the place. The army has been fully deployed in about 30 states actively. It seems to be making no difference. IPOB has been declared a terrorist organization, and IMN has been added to the to the list.
I think you just keep to the. I mean, there are stories on this also. Maybe we just read out the headlines also. On the front page of the Daily Independent, federal government has no power to proscribe us, say Shiites. Vow to continue free El Zazaki protest. Proscription is illegal and also immoral, says Falano. Action is not to deny them freedom of worship, says presidency. That's on the front page of the Daily Independent. Also on the Punch newspaper, police tighten security. Court decides El Zazaki's bail today. And also on the Guardian newspaper, protests in London against El Zazaki's detention. You find the photo here of members of Islamic Human Rights Commission demonstrating against the continued detention of Shiite leader Sheikh El Zazaki in front of the Nigerian High Commission in London yesterday. There were 3 riders on this one of the Guardian. Why IMN was proscribed by presidency. Shiite group urges aggrieved sect to seek justice legally. Yakase Junaid, others differ on government's ban. You find these headlines across the papers. Also on the Daily Trust, presidency, why Shiite group was proscribed.
And from Vanguard, it's risky, illegal to outlaw Shiites. That's credited to Khan, Shehu Sani, and SANs. The writers, we are studying court order. No plan to attack Southwest, says IMN. FG acted with impure intentions. Khan, action against IMN unconstitutional. SANS insist. IMN whipping up sentiment. The presidency, Vanguard newspaper with that one. And from Daily Sun, Shiites criminality outlawed, not freedom of worship. Presidency speaking there.
Okay, so historically, you can always tell when a government is on the lower moral ground. When dozens of human rights lawyers, dozens of senior advocates, international human rights organizations, and even the leadership of, in quotes, another religion, that is the leadership of the Christian Association of Nigeria. You can always tell when the government is on the lower moral ground, when all these people are united on one basis, that the government has overreached and overacted in terms of describing an organization as terrorist. The government is on the brink of being accused of frivolity. Globally, and this is a global definition, I'm not making it up. You see, and the job of journalists is to be factual and to be truthful. To be declared as terrorists, an organization must have political goals which it aims to achieve by means of terror. The IMN does not have political goals which it aims to achieve by means of terror.
So how come the government was able to get, the court to agree to this?
An ex parte order. Well, I can get an ex parte order declaring that what you are wearing is a fashion crime. It's an ex parte order.
So
it's not challenged.
What this does is that it casts a shadow on our judicial system.
Of course.
And
it's
embarrassing so
to the judicial system.
Quickly, and unfortunately, what this would mean also is that the military can now take action against members of the IMN because the group is proscribed as a terrorist group.
So this is what I always describe as the law of unintended consequence. When you are doing public policy, you always have to game everything you do. You have to look at every single scenario.
How it could play out.
Yes, before you take a step forward. An organization has been described as terrorist, which has never committed an act of terror. On what basis did that court?
What organization are we talking about?
IMN. Islamic Movements of Nigeria. Well, don't worry, guys.
Never committed an act of terror.
I'm not sure the terrorist is the word to use here. They've been proscribed. Does that make them? Does that make that a pronouncement of a terrorist organization?
Read the judgment now.
That's
Read the ex parte order. The ex parte order says that the IMN is now a terrorist organization, an organization that has never committed an act of terror. Look, organizing peaceful protests that even turn violent is not an act of terror. It is not.
We would have a full conversation.
We always need to have clear. Look, there are enough laws to deal with peaceful protests that turn violent.
Yes.
There are more than enough laws to be able to do so. So let us take one step forward, not even 100 steps forward. So what happens if on Friday Shia Muslims go to the mosque and start chanting free Zaki Zaki, or start to march in circles around the mosque? What's going to happen? That
would be a protest. So
then what's going to happen? The army will go there and start shooting.
We'll have to wait and see. Rotimi, let's move away from this story.
Sorry, there is also an important point to make.
Quickly, please.
You see, so people will recall, and I'm not even comparing Zaki Zaki to Mandela. I'm not doing so. But it is just to demonstrate that there is a global standard for frivolity. So Mandela was declared a terrorist. The African National Congress, which is the party in power in South Africa today, was declared a terrorist organization. Only the white minority government in South Africa sincerely believed it, maybe along with some global leaders like Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher. The rest of the world didn't take them seriously. Our government always has to act with the utmost seriousness. If an organization commits an act of terror that is well recognized, the government can go ahead and declare that organization terrorist. You will not hear a saying. Look, there's nobody arguing that Boko Haram is not a terrorist organization.
Yes, because they've been carrying out several.
There is global. Look, even members of Boko Haram cannot argue that they are not terrorists.
Let's move away from this one quickly. There are so many other stories. We'll have full conversations on Nigeria Info on this topic subsequently. Talking about Boko Haram. Boko Haram kills 65 mourners in Borno. Locals say it's a reprisal. Buhari Zulum condemn attack. You find this also on the Daily Independent. Boko Haram kills 60 villagers, injures 11 in fresh Borno attack. Buhari unleashes army on insurgents. On the Punch newspaper, tragedy as gunmen kill 60 mourners at Borno grave site. This is really very, very sad.
Yes, it is. From Daily Sun newspaper, bloodbath at Borno funeral. 30 killed by gunmen. Soldiers kill 5 bandits, arrest 4 in Kaduna. Daily Sun newspaper. From this day, Buhari orders reprisal as Boko Haram kills 65 mourners in Borno.
Well, I mean,
that's a clear act of terror. There is a clear act of terror. Remember, Boko Haram announced itself as a terrorist organization globally with the attack on the UN compound in Abuja. Before then, they had launched some attacks which people were not sure, what exactly was happening. That announced them as a terror organization. Now, even in dealing with Boko Haram, it has to be nuanced. So the new current governor of Borno State said something over the weekend which human rights organizations, development economists, and experts have been pointing out. And the government seems not to be paying attention. Now the governor of Borno, in fact, the previous governor, Shetima, who's now in the Senate, started saying it over the last 1 year. The current governor is reiterating it, that poverty, unemployment, lack of access to education are key drivers in the rise of Boko Haram.
Like they finally realized.
Nobody is justifying Boko Haram.
Yes.
Now the governors there are making rational explanations.
Isn't that why the northern governors went to Canada to hold a summit to discuss
in Canada? They didn't hold the education summit in Nigeria.
Oh,
or
goodness.
summit on that is a terrorist organization. But the governor in the state that is most affected is now
Recognizing
making developmental arguments on how Boko Haram can be undermined by taking away its recruits, by ending poverty, ending unemployment. So even when it is clear that an organization is terrorist, the solution is not only to send in the army. There are other solutions to it. Look,
which would include education, infrastructure.
Look, in the UK, the IRA, the Irish Republican Army, which was fighting for, in quote, Irish independence, and was declared a terrorist organization, and rightly so, because they were throwing bombs all over the place. Even though sometimes they will give warning, there is a bomb there, the place should be vacated, and so forth. Even there, the key causes of it had to be addressed. Mandela, which I mentioned earlier, and many South African leaders were called in to help negotiate between the IRA and the British government. A peace deal you have to address what drives it.
That's right.
Talking about addressing, there's this story here I'll just mention while we skip over. Southwest governors to launch new security architecture in August. You can find this across all the papers. Southwest governors to launch new security plan by next month. But let's see this one on the business scene. Buhari approves action committee on AFCFTA. This is on the front page of the Daily Trust. It's also on the Daily Independent. Buhari moves to implement Africa's planned free trade.
From front page of Vanguard newspaper, AFCFTA, Buhari approves establishment of National Action Committee. Vanguard newspaper. From this day newspaper, Buhari okays committee to herald AFCFTA implementation.
So, we've got the ribbon on it.
At least there is progress on that front. But I think the presidency will have to do more than set up a committee on the free trade. The main things that make Nigeria uncompetitive, and these were the fears that the president was expressing when he initially declined to sign, is that the cost of doing business makes Nigerian businesses uncompetitive. What makes it easier to do business, say like in Ghana, Kenya, and even in South Africa, where they have, look, the South Africans acknowledge that they have electricity problem. South Africa is 4 times smaller than Nigeria, and they generate about 50,000 megawatts of electricity. Yet they acknowledge they have electricity problem. 50,000 megawatts.
Wow.
And they are 4 times smaller than us.
If we had 50,000 megawatts, good gracious.
Look.
Would we? I'm just imagining.
So, these are the kind of things that need to be addressed. Multiple uses of water. Look, every serious business supplies its own water. And there is nowhere you don't need water. In beverages, beer, soft drink, textile, you just name it. Everybody has to supply their water. Everybody has to supply their electricity. The transport is horrendous. Importing and exporting is a nightmare. And those are just 3 or 4 examples. Those are the things that we need to address that will make Nigerian businesses able to compete with other African countries. As it stands now, a lot of goods and services are cheaper outside Nigeria, and then when they reach Nigeria, those are the ones that people are going to patronize. So
my fear with this is we don't have this infrastructure in place right now. We don't have the electricity. We don't have the water. So we have already, agreed to the AFCFTA. This will still happen. Good will still be cheaper across the border. People will not have free access to bring them in. I think it's going to be another excuse for the government not to deal with the issues because people wouldn't complain. They'll be able to buy the goods cheaper anyway. We've not dealt with the issues. So
the government signed because it was a lose-lose
situation,
scenario.
yeah.
Because many people pointed out, including many of us talking on this station, myself, Tunji Andrews, many people, we pointed out that not signing is a bigger lose or a bigger loss than signing. Because if you don't sign, you can't export to those countries.
And they would bring it in
But they
anyway.
can export here because all they had to do is just to go and set up base in Ghana and all the other ECOWAS countries. And within ECOWAS, there is free movement of goods and services. So we wouldn't have been able to export to them, but they would just come into ECOWAS, set up base, and Nigeria is the biggest market in Africa.
Well, before we go, let's see this story, and it's about the ministers on the front page of the Punch. Don't reappoint Ngige as Labour Minister. NLC wants federal government on the front page of the Punch.
Who are they going to inflict Ngige on?
Well, so also here, take your complaints to the Senate. Presidency replies critics of the ministerial list. If you have any complaints, go tell it to the Senate.
The Senate that has confirmed them.
You have similar stories on other papers. Senate to screen Saraki, Fashola, 7 others today. You find that on the front page of the Daily Trust. It's going to be a long day also today, and we'll be here giving you live coverage as the ministerial screening begins. Anxiety in Southwest APC as Bola Tinubu loses out. Tinubu not bothered as long as they are capable. That's coming from Southwest APC. Say they are also his allies. A lot of politicking still going on.
That's right.
That one is normal. No need for comment.
No need.
VP visits Channels TV reporters' family. That's the front page of the Nation newspaper. Ruga to take off soon in Nasarawa reveals Governor Sule. The writer no going back on Heada's settlement. Zamfara governor. Leah still alive. The father. The headlines from Daily Sun newspaper.
Her father believes she's still alive. Well, Nigeria, we hope. I sincerely hope that she's still alive.
We have to hold out hope
until confirmation. But that's it on the front pages. Thank you for joining us on Facebook. We see all your comments. After the break, we'll be talking hepatitis. Yesterday was World Hepatitis Day. Dr. Tuyime Bamodu will be joining us. Rotimi Sankore is still here also to talk about hepatitis on the show today, right after the break. Join us again. I'm Wemimo Adewuni.
And I'm Sheriff Quadri.
More talk, news and sports after this.